Hello, Paintbox friends. Welcome to this month's project. I have David here helping me do some filming today, and we're going to paint this lovely street lined with autumn trees. And we just drove back from David's college reunion, and we saw a lot of this pretty fall color on the road today. So I'm anxious to get started, but I'd like to try to introduce my little Gracie, our little Gracie, who I've put pictures in the videos before. But Gracie, come here. Let's see if we can get her in the video. I don't know. Let's try.
Uh-oh.
One more time.
Let's try more.
One more time. There we go. That's our Gracie. She's a good girl. She's got a new soccer ball, so she's having a little fun with it. But anyway, there's Gracie in person. We'll see you at step one. All right, welcome again to this painting. For those of you who are new to us, if this is your first project, I'll walk you through step by step and try to keep it simple for you and make it easy. And again, my name is Catherine Gray, and I'm a teacher of art oil painting here in Louisville, Kentucky. And I'm ready to get started with this project here. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure your brush has a little bit of water on it. This is the only step where we thin out paint just a little bit in our drawing step one. I'm going to take a little water and reach over for this yellow ochre. That's that mustardy yellow, your second yellow. And we're going to put a little, I have one of my dogs here barking today. I put a little dot on each side at the halfway marker. And that's just to kind of guide us through the drawing a little bit. So this drawing's somewhat simple here. We've got the road in perspective vanishing away from us, and Sienna's got to stop barking. So what I'm going to do, I think the leaves, I'm going to start right about here and head towards center. And actually that road's a little lower. It's coming right down below this. If center's here, it's a little below. So I want that road to be really pretty shallow. So I'm just going to take my finger and kind of erase some of that. And then this way. So I guess you saw Gracie, our Australian Shepherd, in the intro video. And I now have one of my Shih Tzus here. Her name is Sienna, and she's the color of your burnt sienna color here. So I've got two lines. One's kind of the leaves, and one's the edge of the road. The pile of yellow leaves that have blown to the side of the road there. And we did take a drive home this morning from out of town, and the highway was just beautiful with all the orange and red and yellow trees. So up here, a little bit to the left and right of that center dot, we're going to come down with kind of the tops of those trees, and then they meet. And then the bottom, starting at about center, the bottoms of those trees kind of head that way. And so you get kind of a big clump of treetops there, and then a matching clump of treetops heading back over to the halfway mark there. So when I teach people to paint trees, I want you to think of them as almost like clouds. So there's big clumps of, each branch creates kind of a clump of leaves, and so often students will try to paint the leaves in individually, and what you want to do is you want to paint just kind of big clumps of color, and then we'll add a few little details later. So this is what I call just like my little cloud shape of those yellow trees and that road almost meeting back there. And we'll fill in the rest. For now, you can go ahead, maybe these trees that are up closer, you see a little more of them, and then they kind of get smaller and smaller and smaller, appear to be closer and closer as they go back. And we don't have to adhere to exactly where you just drew those. We'll come back and play with that later. But I think that is really it for step one. You should have something that looks about like that. We're going to put some of these other branches in later, after we get some of the leaves in. So if your drawing looks about like that, we're ready to go. See you back here at step 2. All right, we're back here for step 2. And what we're going to do now is the background. So I'm going to paint I'm going to make sure my brush is clean from that yellow ochre. And I'm going to paint just this little bit of sky that you see peeking up at the top and through the bottom down by the road. And a little bit of that blue and in the background behind the trees. And then we're going to paint the road. And that'll be it for the background. So let's start with that sky color. I'm going to take my knife. Palette knife is kind of like a little spatula. You want to use this end that's kind of bendy right here. And just use the end of it. And I'm going to take some white and a little bit of that cerulean blue. You see I used a tiny speck. And that little speck was even a little too much, so I'm going to add a little more white in there. And we'll take that very light color and just put it in right up here. Well, I might take that little dot out with your finger because it's going to turn that sky a little bit green. Unless it's dry already. We'll come back. I'm going to put that bright glow right down in there. And then we're just going to put in a faint background color between these trees up front. Actually, the trees up front are a little wider. They get skinnier as it goes back. We can fill back in with some of those later. I just want to get some of these in the front filled in. And all right. Mostly just these little blue shapes right up front. Now I'm going to make something for the road. And if it's a gravel road or even asphalt, in the daylight, it's going to reflect a lot of blue sky. That's why you'll see roads often painted in a kind of a lavender. So I am going to use my palette knife. I always call it a spatula. Use my palette knife to pick up a little tiny bit of blue. And then, well, let's see, a little more. And a little bit of purple. So all these color mixtures are written in your written instructions. And you can go ahead and choose to make them ahead and then turn the video on and follow with me, and then you'll have your colors already ready. I see some of my students doing that here when they're doing my paint box projects in class. Or you can just mix along with me, but if I'm mixing a little too fast, you can read the instructions and mix up ahead. That's a kind of a nice purpley color. I'm going to make at least 3 shades. I'm going to make one very light and kind of almost grayish, and then I'm going to make one that's more of a medium, and I think I'm going to gray that one out as well. So what I'm going to do to gray that out, I'm just going to add a little bit of this umber. That's your dark chocolate brown. Make it look a little less bright because you don't want it to look like a bright purple road. All right, so for the lightest color, let's take a little bit of the blue, a little speck of the red, and maybe a little bit of the umber. And I'm going to add a little more white. Well, actually, no, I think maybe, well, just a little. Don't want to add too much white. So it's definitely lighter. And then let's go for the darker one. I'm going to go with the ultramarine blue and A little bit of that red. You see how very little of that red now, a little less white, so we stay darker. So I'm going to add a little more blue to that and a little of that umber. And that'll start out with the 3 shades for the road. Just a speck more red in there. All right. May need to make more of those colors. Now I have these little dappled areas of sunlight here, so I'm going to go ahead and just take my lightest color and draw a couple of circles where I want to not paint anything in so we can get some real light sunlight dapples in those areas. Just choose a few random areas. Maybe these bigger here. And then I'm going to pick up, when you pick up paint, I forgot to mention for those of you who are new this month, when you pick up paint, I want you to hold your brush back about 2/3 of the way back and learn to kind of use your elbow more than your wrists and fingers. So I'm going to sweep, I'm going to hold that brush about like this. I'm going to come over here and sweep like I'm sweeping with a broom and pick that paint up. And then I'm going to just kind of slide it on, so it's almost should feel like icing or peanut butter or butter going on that canvas. And I'm just kind of using little swirly strokes here to put that line along the bottom of the road. And I'm going to take that other clump of paint here. Coming down. And take off some of that dark color, and now I'm just going to start kind of randomly placing the lighter purple. And I'm actually using the direction of that filtered sunlight, that angular, long brush stroke, kind of a little diagonal here on the canvas. And it looks like I'm going to pick up the white, add some of that in. Looks like I didn't make nearly enough paint. So we'll just go through those formulas again. My students often worry about mixing up enough paint because they don't want to do it again. But the more often you repeat a formula, the easier the formulas will get for you. So it's just think of it as good practice. I'm going to start with the middle purple, which is going to be picking up the blue and a tiny, tiny speck of the red. And I'm using the purple red, more commonly called alizarin crimson, but on your tube it says purple red because it's a very purplish red. And let's add some white to that pile. Looks like I need a little more blue. That red was just so strong. And then I added a little brown to gray it out. And that makes it good. And then let's take all the rest of this white and add it over here for that lighter color. A little more blue because that red is so strong. Now I've got it a little too blue, but I'm going to add a little brown in there to gray it out. Add some more white here. Let's see, so I want to add white to this lightest pile. And then just a little brown to gray that out a little. Make it look more realistic. It's hard enough to convince people that their road's actually looks kind of purple without it being a vibrant purple in the painting. And purple, a tiny speck of red. I'm going to cut some of my red out. I put too much in there. It's just a speck. Wish I had a better way to describe just a speck because I mean just a little bit. And you know what? I just realized I really don't need much of that darker color. I'm just going to throw this into all of this into that middle color, which is what I needed more of. And let's add a little brown. Gray that out. And a little more blue. It's looking too reddish. There's a difference, you know, between red violet and blue violet. So I'm wanting more of a blue violet. There we go. I think that's good. Still a little redder than my first mixture, but it'll go on just fine and look pretty. So my students say, oh gosh, I didn't get the same exact color. Well, that's kind of good. Your painting's going to be more interesting. It's not very often that you need to recreate the exact same color again. And I'm trying to not make, your brush shouldn't really make any noise because it's got a big clump of paint sliding along between the brush and the canvas. There's an old saying that the brush should never touch the canvas. I think I'm going to add a little more blue to that color. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't need to match, but I just don't want it to be too, it needs to be much more of a grayish purple. Because the gravel or the asphalt is grayish, so I'd rather it be a little more gray. And make sure you've got a pretty good hunk of paint. Can you see the size hunk of paint I've got on there? And slide it along. So welcome to all the new painters. I love sending boxes out. I've sent them to many countries around the world. I'm gonna pick up some of this lighter color and just kind of intersperse that. And so that's why I like to talk a little bit about what things look like around Louisville, Kentucky and Middle America here, because it might be different where you live. This is our autumn. Right now when I'm taping this lesson, it's the end of October. And I think that's gonna be it. And our leaves come in, the color comes in mid to late October. And then we lose the leaves around the end of November. And we've had a lot of rain the last few days. And the sun's out today and the trees are bright. All right, I think that's it for the background if you want to get caught up. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't fill in those little dappled sunlight areas. So I'm going to take the white. I'm just going to put in a little tiny bit of this bright yellow. You can almost hardly even see it, but it won't be white anymore. It's going to be just what we call a tint. A tint is something that's really close to white. So I'm just going to need a light yellow tint. And I'm going to drop that in there on those little dappled sunlight areas, and we'll come back. You might pick up a little purple as you're doing that, and that's okay. We'll come back and fill those in and, you know, work on, not really perfecting, but work on finishing up details later. I do that in step 4. Right now we're just going to lay the paint on, and then we'll go back and finish it all up in step 4. And so I'm going to meet you back here for step 3, which is going to be the trees, and we'll see you back here then. Okay, so for step 3, we're going to make up 3 of these beautiful shades of yellow and yellow-orange. So the first shade, I'm going to take this lightest yellow, which is your lemon yellow, and mix it with a little white. Let's see that. Yeah, but that's going to be the lightest shade. So it's just going to be lemon yellow with some white. Let me do a little more of that white and a little more yellow. Not more yellow. This is the part that's gonna go here where it's really glowing. So yellow and white. Lemon, yellow and white. A little more. A little more. I put way too much white in there, but that's okay. We'll use all of this. Okay, so for the second pile, I'm going to take a little bit of that lemon yellow, about an equal amount of the yellow ochre, Maybe I shouldn't have done an equal amount. Let me pull out some yellow ochre and put it back. And then, so we'll say 1/3 lemon yellow, 1/3 yellow ochre, 2/3 lemon yellow at this point. That's pretty. Do I want to lighten it up? I might do a little more lemon. That's pretty. And that's going to be that pretty middle color. And then I'm going to go in and make this dark color. The yellow ochre, I'm going to warm it up to make it a little more orange. I'm going to put in a little bit of this vermilion red. Put a little more orange. Let me try adding a little bit of that burnt sienna. It's kind of a real reddish brown. Because I want that to be noticeably darker. Oh, that is really pretty. We'll see how that works there. All right, so remember I was talking about trees being these cloud shapes. Kind of think of them as clouds or big cotton balls. Let's go ahead first and take that lightest lemon yellow and see, this yellow ochre should be pretty dry now. Yeah. And then just gonna drop that in that area where it's glowing. Just putting in big shapes. So in this method of painting, Impressionist painting, where we paint all in one day like the Impressionists would out in the field, and Monet painting the haystacks. When they painted outdoors, they had to get it all done in one sitting so the paint didn't dry in between layers or steps. And that's pretty much what this method of painting is called. And since the time of the Impressionists, we call this direct method painting, or alla prima, which kind of means all at once. All at first setting. I'm reaching over now for the medium color, and I'm gonna just start splashing that in. The light's coming up through the end of the tunnel here, the end of the tunnel of trees. And I'm just gonna kind of put it through the middle. And then I'm going to alternate, start putting in some of that rich dark color, just a little bit randomly. But I do, each tree might go light to medium to dark as the sun wraps around it, or maybe not as much light, maybe medium to dark as you get further back here. And just don't worry about it being really finished yet. There's still a long way to go in step 4 when we pull it all together. I'm using the edge of my brush to just pull that paint. I don't ever want to stab at those paint piles and break bristles. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to make some more of that medium color. Let me finish putting this dark over here a little bit more. See if I'm gonna need to make more dark as well. All right, so the medium color, that was where I was using pretty much 2/3 of lemon yellow to 1/3 yellow ochre. It looks like I need some more of that. All right, let's see. Oh, that turned out pretty good. Oh, and then I think in this one, no, I didn't put any red in that one. That was in the 3rd pile. So that was it, lemon yellow, 2/3 lemon yellow to 1/3 yellow ochre. And yeah, that's pretty. Then I'm going to put the tree trunks and branches in next. And then we'll really worry about making leaves and leaf shapes. So, just start blending in a little of that medium color into this glow area. And I'm getting smaller brush strokes, so that's where it's starting to look a little more like leaves. And now, for the tree trunks, I'm going to make 2 shades of brown for the tree trunks. I'm going to take my chocolate brown, which is burnt umber, and I'm going to put a little blue in it because I kind of want a blackish bark, kind of gray. The sun's coming from this side, so the tree trunks are lighter on the left side and a little darker on the right side. So shadow and light is where you get dimension. If you don't want your painting looking flat, you need shadow and light. That's my dark shadow color. Do I like that? Yeah. I could add a little more blue to that. I wouldn't mind if it was a little darker. Then what I'm going to do is, for this black mixture that we made, I'm just going to take a little of it, move it over here, and add a little white to that and see if we get a nice highlight color. That's very nice. That is my highlight color. That'll kind of blend in nicely. So I'm going to pick up the dark. Like I said, the sun's coming from the left, so I'm going to put the dark trunk color on the right side of each tree. So I'm picking up the paint. I'm trying to get it really more just on the end, on the little chisel end of my brush, if you can see where it is. I'm going to just pull it down, be the left side of the tree trunk. I'm going to reach over here, get a little bit on the end, and believe it or not, you can just pull it right up through there. Maybe skip a little bit here and there. And wipe off that orange paint that you just picked up. And maybe kind of have the trunk curve out and get a little fatter at the bottom. Let's go to the next trunk. And maybe I'll add a big limb going out that way. And maybe this one has one going this way and this way. So if you pay attention to how trees grow, and if you paint trees, you'll start noticing how they grow. I'm just still using the darker color. And just pull on through that orange. Then come over here, wipe it off. Get some more dark black, blackish brown. And the trunks get a little smaller and they start getting closer together. And go back and just kind of crisscross some branches. And that's okay if the branches kind of fade away when they get up in that orange. Come back and touch them up a little bit later. You might like have some of them just kind of skip where you don't see them going all the way through. And I think at this point I need to go ahead and make up some more of that blackish brown. Just going to put a couple little sharper limbs floating around in there. All right, time to make the I think I need to get some more blue. And ultramarine blue. Let's see here. There we go. Ultramarine blue. There, that was easy. The blue and the brown made brownish, pretty soft brownish black. So that's a much prettier black than you could get out of the tube. The tube black I only use in certain instances that, well, maybe I'm painting, I do some live event painting. I paint weddings a lot. I paint live on the scene, usually the first dance or the cutting of the cake. And the black tie tuxedos that the men wear are often pretty darn black, like the black out of the tube that you have. And sometimes like dogs' noses, they're pretty darn black, or a bicycle tire. But most other blacks, like the black on these trees, is a soft brownish black. You can have greenish blacks and bluish blacks. So I encourage my students to notice what kind of black it is. And when you're painting a black animal or a white animal, it's really good to pay attention to all the different shades of white. For example, I've got a white egret hanging here in the studio right next to me that I painted after being in South Carolina at the beach. And you should see all the colors. I'll insert a picture of that because you should see all the colors in the white feathers of the egret. And just adding those trees. Now see how I'm not making them look perfect. It's, paintings are so much more fun and interesting, I think, when they're not like photorealism. I mean, that's a wonderful genre of painting, when things look so extremely realistic, we call it photorealism. I'm more interested in teaching you all to do impressions of what you see in this world, what an artist can make it look like instead of what it actually looks like. And that's what I want to encourage you all to do. I'm going to start putting in some of those highlight colors just on the chisel end of that brush. See how I'm just dipping that chisel end in and picking up just about that much paint. And now I'm going to do a little bit different brush stroke. I'm going to tap, just kind of tapping that lighter color so the tree trunks have a lighter side. Wrong color. Just mostly on the trunks. I'm not going to worry about going up into the trees. This is where they're catching the sun on this side of the tree. And probably it looks like I'm going to have to make a little more of that lighter color. So I'm just going to take a little of this black formula, and we gotta get some more white out. All right, we're gonna add that white in there. So it's fun to teach my students all the shades of black, like in a black dog sitting out in your yard if you're painting a portrait of your dog, or a white cat, and they'll say, oh, all those colors aren't in my cat's white. And then I'll convince them, when they start looking, they'll see all these different shades. I'm gonna start over here, maybe about halfway down, just doing the little light highlight. Just laying down 80 to 90% of the groundwork here for us to come back in our last finishing step. just on the chisel end of that brush, coming back down. It's getting harder and harder to see as they go farther away, so we don't really need to worry about too much detail in the back there. All right, so that's about where I'm going to leave it with the highlights. Let's go back now into the treetops and just start on this side, adding some of those big branches that kind of go over and maybe crisscross. You don't want to get too carried away. Maybe some nice wiggly tree limbs. Crisscrossing, and we're going to stop here, and the next step would be what we call finishing up. So we've laid the groundwork here, and in the next step 4, we'll finish up. Okay, here we are back for the step 4, what I call finishing up. And in a lot of paintings, I have the painting pretty much mostly done before I get to this step, but for some reason in this painting, I've got a little bit more to do than usual in the finishing up step. So what I'm going to do is, number 1, let's put in the leaves that have fallen and blown to the side of the road here. I just noticed I got a little too close with my black paint. Let's take some of that out. You can also take it out with a Q-tip if you need to. Or just a wet brush, just kind of take some of that dark paint out. All right, so let's take the lighter yellow. I've got some of that left, and I'm just going to kind of drag that along on the side of the road here. And I didn't talk about the most often asked question was, how do I get colors so that they don't smudge into each other and turn into mud? I didn't talk about that yet today. So as you can see, I'm laying this yellow right down on top of where I had that black. If I lay it down very gently, it won't blend into that black. So I also often leave a gap between colors. So if you see there's a little gap between the blue and the gray here. I always say I paint kind of fast, but leaving a little gap between colors. So as you can see right here between the yellow and the purple, I'm leaving a little blank gap that I'll come back and address later. But that way I can just kind of keep moving on and not have to slow down too much. You know, you want the process to be enjoyable, and if it goes too slow or too long, it just becomes not as much fun. I'm just scraping up what I have left here to kind of just try to spread that out to be the leaves at the bottom at the side of the road, and kind of sprinkle those in. All right. Then earlier I mentioned that we were going to come back and worry a little bit more about that sky. Well, we don't really have to worry. We were going to address the sky between the trees. So now I'm just going to carefully tap those little spaces full of blue, misty. It's not so much sky down here, but it's just kind of the light coming off of maybe a big field in the background. Just going to tap in a little bit of blue. I'm probably, because it's so close in there, I'm probably picking up a little bit of that gray. So just wipe my brush off on my paper towel each time. Just filling in a little bit of that blue. And it looks like there's a little blue that I needed to fill in right up in here. Just filling in that blue. Okay, so let's go back and see. Next step is I think we're going to, let's just look at these tree trunks and make sure that they get wider at the bottom like a tree does. Give it that graceful little curve at the bottom. And then I'm going to take whatever kind of black I got left here and just add a few more of those branches. So you're just going to drag that very, very, very lightly. Drag that black that we have over the top, and then maybe dash it a little bit because it's covered by trees and clumps of leaves here and there. Just get smaller and skinnier as you get back here. Try to just tap, 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 tiny, tiny little skinny branches. Couple more. Couple more. And then the last little bit, well, it looks like I'm out of leaf color, so let me just mix up a little more leaf color. Actually, I scraped what I had there together. I might just pick up some of the straight yellow, and remember I said we add some little details? Add just a few little drops, a few little taps. You're probably going to pick up some wet paint, so wipe your brush off if you tap too close to a branch and you picked up some yellow. These are those little leaf details I was talking about earlier. And you don't need very many of them. You almost want to let the viewer kind of fill it in with their own imagination. So I'm just going to tap in a few little leaves. And I make sure they get some kind of covering over the trunks. Maybe I got a little muddy there. Just take it right out with a Q-tip or a wet brush. Just try to drop that down so it looks a little bit as natural as possible, to have some little leaves hanging down right in here. I think we're getting close here. I think that could be it. There may be some little things you might want to do to tweak a little bit. Take a little more of that yellow, put some little highlights in there. But in general, I think that we're pretty much done. Maybe some little more skinny little taps back there. You can stand back, take a break sometimes and stand back and take a look and see what you got, and if it's what you like and what you'd hoped for. It takes a lot of practice, and you've got to learn how to hold the brush and hold it very lightly and loosely, very lightly, because if you put any pressure on the paint, you'll lose the brush stroke. And that's one of the things we love about oils, are the pretty brush strokes. I'm gonna add a little more to my trees right there. And I think I'll take the corner of my brush and maybe a little of this purple, and I'll just go ahead and sign my initials right there. Can't really see it. Let me get a little more dark pink. And be proud of your work, even if it's practice and you didn't feel like you really worked the magic today. Just keep practicing, because like anything else, like anything, guitar, or piano, or cooking, yoga, anything, you've got to practice a lot. So keep taking the lessons. Think of some things to paint at home that might inspire you. I love to see somebody's coffee mug painted. So keep on painting, and we'll see you next month, and we'll see you back here in the studio for the closing video. See you in a minute. Well, I hope you enjoyed that project. It was not too hard, I don't think. My finished version is here. Like I said, I might tweak it a little bit. This was my original version. And every time you do a painting, if I do a painting a couple of times, it comes out different. And that's just because it's all human nature. We can't be like a machine to exactly replicate something. And your copy will be much different than mine, but I'm sure it's good, and I hope it's good. If not, we'll just have you keep trying and keep practicing. And I wanted to have Sienna on film since we gave Gracie some time earlier. This is little Sienna. She's about 10 years old now. You might have remembered from my earlier videos, I used to have Tucker, and he was 14 and a half and passed away in March. And so we have Sienna here now, who's 10, and she also is going a little blind and a little deaf, but she's a good studio dog, and she keeps us company here at the studio. And we wish that you could visit us here at the studio too, but we're glad you're joining us on the YouTube videos, and we will look forward to seeing you all next month.